Okay, everyone, we're going to make a start. Can you please raise your hand to let us know whether you can see the screen and can hear us? For most of you can. Louise, can you hear us and see our screen? Should we start, do you think?
Let's just type in the chat box, Louise, Shabana, and Dawn.
Oh, Louise can.
Yep, okay.
Shabana's on the web version. I wonder if that's why she can't.
And Dawn, has Dawn raised her hand? Yeah, Dawn raised her hand.
Dawn has, yeah. Okay, if you could all put your hands down, we're going to make a start. Thank you. Let's start. Okay, welcome to session 7. I'm going to hand over to Ben.
Yep, so I'm going to launch right in. In this session, we are going to be talking about data collection. This week, you did some reading around validity and reliability, and you looked at your existing research question and the ideas you had for how you were going to carry that out. And you looked at the methods that you picked in light of both validity and reliability, and that's going to be the kind of the basis for the discussions that you're going to be having with one another at the end of today's session. So today's question is, how do I ensure my data is valid and reliable? And so we're going to be talking about validity and reliability today. And to get us started, again, just to welcome everybody back and to let you know that we do not have Simon or Lisa with us today. We also know that Dee is going to be joining us a little bit late, and we have not yet seen Ruslan on the sign-in sheet. So we'll be looking for a couple more people to join us as we go along. What I want to do today is to have an opening discussion around the topics that you've been looking at, as well as some of the topics we've covered in previous sessions. And to do that, I'm going to introduce a hypothetical action research project, and I'm going to describe that project using the same prompts that you responded to in Learning Log 7.1 this week. And so the research question, this hypothetical question that we want to use as a basis for our opening discussion, is how will a physical wellness intervention affect the health of the participants in this course? And again, if you remember from our earlier sessions, the kinds of things that make a good research question, we want to ask ourselves, is this question meaningful? Is it focused? Is it important to us in our role, whatever that role might be? And we also want to be aware, and you will be aware, that as your ideas about your action research project continue to develop, that your question itself may change over time. You may go back and refine it. You may more precisely define who the audience is. You may more precisely define what the outcome is. You may more precisely indicate how you're going to measure that. But for today, this is going to be the research question that we're going to be working with. The next prompt that you had in 7.1 asked you about data collection methods. And again, for hypothetical purposes, in order to answer this question of how will a physical wellness intervention affect the health of the participants in this course, we're going to use some surveys, we're going to use a physical health assessment, and we're also going to encourage the people who are participating to keep some journals. One of the things that you have thought about already, and again, one of the things that this is reflecting, is that we want to collect data, a range of data, not just rely on a single source of data. And you can imagine by looking at these proposed data collection methods that some of these are going to yield qualitative data, that is descriptions, and some of these forms of data collection are going to give us quantitative data or numbers or data in numeric form. The next part of the exercise you did asked you about the measured outcome. What is it that you're going to measure? And in order to answer our question, one of the questions that we want to answer, we want to be able to measure is we want to have an idea of the physical health of the participants in the course. And In more detail, what we want to know is we want to know information about their actual diet. We want to know some information about their actual exercise practices. We want to know about their food preferences. And we're also going to know a little bit about their physical data. With any research project, one of your data methods will probably involve the collection of baseline data. And to get us started today, again, with our hypothetical research question, Latifa is going to launch a poll. And the two questions that we're going to be looking at in the poll are, the first question will be, did you eat breakfast or exercise last week? And it will be a yes or no answer. And the second question in the poll is, do you like chocolate cake? And again, that is going to be a yes or no question. Latifa is going to present the poll to you as two separate questions. So she'll ask you question 1, she'll close that poll, she'll ask you question 2, and she will close that poll, and she's going to share the results after the second question is finished.
Okay. So poll 1, you should be able to see this now. So did you eat breakfast or exercise last week? Okay. So we've got 70%.
70 voted.
Yeah. Guessing because
Yep. A couple more people are still yet to vote. I think it says we have about 70% of you have voted. So if you haven't voted, if you can just tick one of those boxes. This is counting out of 12.
And this is counting out of 12,
Yep.
I think maybe it is. Okay, so we've had 100% yes for this particular answer, for this particular question rather. So I'm going to close this poll now, and we're going to move on to our second question. Do you like chocolate cake? And I'm going to launch this poll now. Okay. Oh. Well, interesting results on this one. 71% of you have said yes, and 29% of you have said no. Okay, so I'm going to close the polls now. I'm going to go back to the screen.
All right.
So if I could just say, if you can't now see the PowerPoint, then please let us know through the chat so that make sure that we can see it.
Yeah. So you should be looking at a PowerPoint slide right now that has a small hand symbol on the side, and it says, what does the data say about how healthy the sample is? And again, just to review one more time very quickly what Latifa has just done, the question was, did you eat breakfast or exercise last week? 100% of the people in this poll said yes, 0% said no. Question number 2, do you like chocolate cake? 71% yes, 29% no. So if that was, if you could imagine if that was the data that you collected to help you answer this research question, what does that data say about health, how healthy the sample is? Please go ahead and raise your hand and we will open your microphone.
Okay, Tom's got his, Tom's put his hand down.
Oh, so that we have, go down a little bit, I think we have.
Oh yeah, we have, we've got Jane, so I'm going to open up your microphone. Okay, go ahead, Jane.
Hi. Well, 100% of people did something relatively healthy, as in they had breakfast or they went and did some exercise, and not everybody liked cake. It's not really definitive, but you could say that they're relatively healthy population. But there's not enough information there to go on.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Kelly. Okay, go ahead, Kelly.
Oh, that first question was terrible. Terrible. It was an or question. Did I have breakfast or exercise? So it didn't tell us anything.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, does anyone else want to add anything? Oh, we've got Dawn. Okay, Dawn.
Yeah, hi. I think unless I had chocolate cake for breakfast, it's kind of irrelevant information.
Okay.
It doesn't indicate how healthy I am or not.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I want to thank everyone for the responses. And as you might have guessed, what we're going to do now is spend a little bit of time dissecting those questions and first understanding the way that the questions were posed, but then also thinking about how we would change those questions so that they gave us some information that would be valid or reliable. So we're going to go,
Yeah, that's next.
go to the next one. Yeah. Before we do that, I have a couple more questions to unpick those. So my first question is, do they actually address the research question? And as a reminder, the research question said, how will a physical wellness intervention affect the health of the participants in this course? So if you disregard the problems that you saw with those questions, do those questions address the research question? What do you think? Go ahead and raise your hand again and we'll open your mic.
Okay. Kelly?
No, I don't think they do, because they don't give you a good set of data about a baseline. So I don't think that they would tell you anything. You wouldn't be able to anything to measure against in the end.
Okay, thank you.
Jane? Did you want to add something, Jane?
Oh, I think that would back what I will say. So.
Right, okay, everyone. Welcome to session 6.
Oh.
Can you please raise your hand
Well, this is what's
and let us know that you can hear us and that you can see us?
Turn Jane on.
Yeah, I think Jane's.
I think that Jane has turned the recording on from session
week,
6.
Yeah.
Okay,
does anyone want to say anything about this question? How effectively do these questions address the research question? No?
Okay.
Oh, Dawn.
Dawn.
Go ahead, Dawn.
Yeah, I think I would agree with what Kelly said. I think they're completely irrelevant. They don't have anything to do. The physical wellness intervention and whether or not I liked chocolate cake is, you know, if the question was more like, how often do you eat chocolate cake? Or do you eat chocolate cake for breakfast? That would be, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not that I'm not a chocolate cake for breakfast cake, but I mean, do you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask you one more question. And in this question, I want you to kind of suspend judgment about whether or not the questions are useful. That's right. Whether or not these questions are useful for addressing the research question. But if you just look at the questions themselves and take them out of the context of the other things we've just been talking about, if you were trying to find out if someone liked chocolate cake, is question 2, does it provide data you can trust? And if you were trying to ascertain whether or not someone had kind of a healthy living routine the last week, does question 1 provide data you can trust? And if you talk about them separately, so maybe if someone, when you're responding, if you could say that you're responding to question 1 or to question 2. And again, go ahead and raise your hand and we'll open your microphone.
Jane, I've just opened your microphones. Would you like to?
Sorry, mine?
Your hand is up. Sorry, did you not? Is it up from before?
Well, I had it up and down, and then I assume. Well, actually, let me say something. What I did want to say is that, did you eat breakfast or exercise last week? As was mentioned earlier, it is an or question, so it's confusing for one. But neither of those things are necessarily criteria for describing a baseline of healthiness or not. So
Okay.
we'd be looking for to develop criteria before you develop questions.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. Okay.
Kelly.
Okay, go ahead, Kelly.
Just to explain a little bit why I thought the or was a problem in question 1 is you're going to get people answering yes who either ate breakfast or exercised or did both, and there you have 3 different elements of the question, but all people are identifying in the same way. The only people who would say no are people who did neither, so you haven't really answered a lot of your you haven't really answered your question in the way that it's written.
Okay. And what about the chocolate cake question? Again, if you take this question out of the context of the research project and you were asking that question, would the information you get actually answer the question?
Would someone like to answer the question that was just posed? Okay. Go ahead, Kelly.
I suppose it would, as long as you're consistent in the way you ask it at the beginning and the end. Self-reporting is what it is. It's just, a person's answer at that time. So I guess, yeah, in and of itself, question 2 would give you a good answer as to whether or not someone liked chocolate cake.
Okay. Yeah. And Kelly, one of the reasons I think that is so important to think about that is that oftentimes we will develop questions for surveys that themselves are good questions, but one of the things that makes them good questions is not just that they provide data that you can trust, but they actually address the research question. So there are a whole range of criteria that we want to think about when we're developing questions around, especially questions that will be used in surveys. So I'm going to now unpick these a little bit more, and I'm probably going to say and mention a lot of the things that have already been said. And I'm going to start by talking specifically about reliability. And remember, a question with good reliability measures information readily, and that is each time you measure, you get the same results. And so this question, did you eat breakfast or exercise last week? Everyone recognized this, or everyone who responded recognized this as an or question. And so what you're asking is, did you eat breakfast or did you exercise last week? But even this, the question could actually mean a lot of different things to a lot of people. And so not only could you have that or mixed in, but you also have the dilemma of, did you eat a healthy breakfast or did you eat an unhealthy breakfast? Was the exercise that you participated in light or healthy? And so even above and beyond the fact that there's an or, which means that you have to kind of connect two different ideas, it's a double question, there actually may be multiple questions here. There may actually be 4 or more different questions in this piece because it lacks some of the descriptors that it should have in order to make it both a valid and reliable question. So again, I'm going to put this question up now, and I'm going to ask you to change the question to enhance its reliability. Again, if you could raise your hand and tell me the different ways that you could change this question to enhance its reliability and to ensure that the data that you get answers the question and that it relates to the research question. Again, please raise your hand to respond.
Okay, we've got Tom. Go ahead. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I think you could make it 2 questions. So how often have you eaten breakfast in the last week? Or how often have you exercised in the last week? And then they could just give you a concrete number and you could do calculations based on that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So you could turn it into an open-ended question rather than a binary response question, which is a good way to collect a range of data and sometimes very specific and detailed data.
Okay, got Louise.
Louise.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, you could just make it a bit more specific. So if you're wanting to find out whether it was a healthy breakfast, or you might want to add in like a checklist. So items. So you might list breakfast items and say, did you eat, this for breakfast or whatever. And then in terms of exercise, you could obviously say how often, or you could say, was it light, medium, moderate, high intensity, etc.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
And we've got Ruslan. Go ahead, Ruslan.
Hi, do you hear me?
We can.
Okay, so I think that obviously it will depend on what do we want to find out in the end. What is the main purpose of the research? Do we want to know whether it's a healthy breakfast or whether it's a very high in fat breakfast or high in protein breakfast? So that, as Louise said, making it more specific would help. But I also would like to add that self-reporting about last week can be very unreliable, as as we were discussing. So maybe adding one more question about an event that happened last week could also validate the memory of that person.
Great, Ruslan, thank you for that. And what Ruslan has again drawn our attention to is going back and examining what the original research question was. And this particular research question was, how will a physical wellness intervention affect the health of the participants in this course? And it's at this point, even as you begin to collect baseline data, that you may begin to reshape your research question. Maybe the research question is really too broad. Maybe the research question needs to focus either on exercise or diet. It could just be too big for this particular, for the scope of the piece of work that's going to be done. The other thing is, as Ruslan pointed out, that self-reporting is sometimes not the most reliable form of data collection, because people can obviously self-report that their behaviors are actually better than they actually are. And that's why when you look at data collection techniques, you're going to want to have a range of things. So you want some things that involve self-reporting, as well as things that don't involve self-reporting, that will give you another perspective on the particular question. So Shabana.
Shabana, do you want to add anything?
Yeah. Good evening. Yes. The question I would like to change is, how much calories did you have in your breakfast last week?
Okay. Again, trying to, instead of just capture qualitative data, to begin to quantify that data even within the survey. Great. Okay, we're going to move on now to the next slide. And the next slide relates to the second question. And here we want to talk a little bit more about validity. And a question with good validity actually measures the information it's supposed to measure. And again, just to review, the question that we had was, do you like chocolate cake? Question 2 is intended to measure how healthy the participants' eating habits are. Again, if we go back to our original question, how will a physical wellness intervention affect the health of the participants in this course? We should be asking questions that are kind of getting at general healthy practices. And again, this question, you might assume, if it's included in this piece of research, should relate to that research question. But you might actually notice that it seems to only be measuring preference for chocolate cake. And so again, I'm going to ask you to think about that question and suggest ways that you could change this question or make a completely different question that would have a higher level of validity. That is a question that actually measures what we're trying to measure in order to answer the research question. And again, if you would raise your hand, please.
Okay, go ahead, Tom.
Oh, sorry, I still have my hand up from the last one, but...
Want to have a go at this?
Yeah, sure. I mean, does the question have to do, does it need to do with chocolate cake, or can we just say?
It doesn't have to do with chocolate cake.
All right. So, I mean, you could just say, do you feel like you have healthy eating habits? Rank yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 or something, maybe, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, Shabana.
Do you like chocolate cake to a dark chocolate cake?
Okay, so you're thinking about perhaps suggesting that there are certain kinds of chocolate cake that might be slightly healthier than other types of chocolate cake.
That's right.
All right.
You've got Louise.
Louise.
Okay, Louise.
Yeah, I mean the problem with the question that's there at the moment is, do you like chocolate cake? Is obviously not valid at all. It's not really going to give you anything for your research question because, you know, I love chocolate cake. It doesn't mean I actually eat it. So I think it can give, you know, it's the answer wouldn't really kind of give the response, you know, that you're looking for the research question. So something like, you know, you might talk about how many times a day do you eat, and then list the items or something like that.
Great, Louise. Yeah, no, I agree that you could actually ask a question. You could say, how often do you eat chocolate cake? Because again, as you indicated, a preference for chocolate cake doesn't actually mean that you're consuming it regularly. It could be something that you love and you have once a year on your birthday. So by actually changing the question around to look at frequency of consuming that rather than preference for it, may give you more information that's more valid. Did anyone else want to add something to that?
Yeah.
Okay. One of the things that I want to point out is, of course, that we have just looked at 2 questions, and whenever you are using a survey, you're actually using an entire question set. And when you're designing a question set, one of the things that you want to be certain that you're doing is you're actually asking a series of questions that are all measuring the same idea. And you may actually frame those questions differently. You may frame them in terms of the food you eat, the amount of them you eat, the frequency that you eat. But one of the ways to increase validity and reliability is actually to develop questions as a set rather than as single standalone questions. And again, that typically is the way that surveys work when you're trying to collect self-reported data. You want people to answer a similar question several times just to make sure that they're answering the question consistently. So question sets are one of the ways that we improve both validity and reliability. All right, so I'm going to suggest that this is a wildly improved question for this poll. And this question number 3 is, within the past 24 hours, how many vegetables have you eaten? And here we're going to define what a vegetable is. A vegetable is a fist-sized portion of cooked and uncooked vegetables, salads, and potatoes. Now, this seems to be, on the surface, a much more detailed question. It leaves a lot less room for interpretation. But again, like the other questions, I wonder if you can make some suggestions about how you might change this question still to enhance its reliability or validity. And if you could go ahead and raise your hand to respond, please.
Okay, go ahead, Ruslan.
So I was thinking about how many vegetables? Is it 3 grams, 3 kilograms, liters perhaps if it's a soup, you know? So specifying the, you know, the size, what's the measurement for size would help.
Yep, great. So you're recognizing that vegetables are actually different densities, and a fist-sized portion of lettuce is going to be a lot less lettuce than a fist-sized portion of potato, for example.
Yes.
Great.
Yes, and calories, another way, you know, a balanced diet. If we're measuring balanced diet, then we want to know the fats versus proteins ratio, all sorts of things.
Okay.
That's great. Thank you. Anyone else?
Okay, hi, Shabana.
Hey, what are the vegetables do you have in your salads, and how many times do you eat them in 24 hours?
Okay, so that ends up being an interesting question, because we know that different salads have different kinds of vitamins and minerals and different kind of calorie counts, and having an idea of the way that people are combining those things may give you an idea of the balance of of nutrients that they're taking in on a daily basis. So again, instead of just using this generic vegetables, to begin to understand in a bit more detail what people are actually consuming. One of the reasons that I've taken this really simple idea and asked you to kind of dissect it and find ways to improve it several times is that this is a really important part of designing your data collection methods. In the same way that you might have looked at any of those questions we had today and said, right, that question is good and it's ready to go. It's so important that you critically examine each question that you would include in a survey or the things you include in any data collection device. In action research, because you are not only the researcher but also the participant, one of the things that becomes critically important is that you have the feedback from someone who is a critical friend, a colleague, someone who is participating with you or supporting you in your action research. And it's exactly that we are going to practice next. What I would like you to do is to go ahead and take out your paper copy or open your electronic copy of Learning Log 7.1. In just a moment, we're going to ask you to open the second device that we've asked you to have available today. If you don't have a second device, you can use the chat box, but we'd had some feedback from people that they were keen to try a live chat rather than typing into the chat box because they felt that they could have a much richer discussion by doing that. So I'm hoping that most of you, or all of you actually, as I'm hoping, have arranged to Skype with the person who you were assigned to prior to today's meeting. Again, if you haven't done that, you can use the chat box in order to have your conversation. But in a moment, I'm going to ask you to open that second device, whether it's an iPad or an iPhone, and Skype your paired live chat partner to discuss your responses to the questions in 7.1. As a reminder today, the paired live chats, we have Dawn and Tom, Louise and Ruslan, Jane and Denise, Gabby and Shabana, and Kelly and Dee. And let's see if Dee has joined us. Dee is meant to be coming on at any moment. Kelly, you may need to wait just a moment for Dee to arrive. She was supposed to be joining us at 4 o'clock, and it is just 4 o'clock now. So again, we will be expecting her in just a moment. Let me give you a few more directions of what I'd like you to do today. So what I'm asking you to do this paired live chat is a dialogic validity exercise. And dialogic validity, you might remember from your reading this past week, is one of 4 types of validity. And it refers to the extent to which your research makes sense to other people. And again, that's quite important in action research where you might be researching your own practice. The best way to address dialogic validity is to share your action research plan with a friend, and that's what we're going to ask you to do in just a moment. In this live chat exercise, the first person is going to share the response they recorded using Learning Log 6.1, and the other person is going to listen. This is going to work really well if you're doing it using Skype. If you are using the chat box, it will take a little bit longer. When the first person is finished speaking, I'd like the second person to use the following prompts to respond to what they just heard. And those prompts are at the bottom of our screen right now. They're I like, I wish, and I wonder. And these are prompts that come from design thinking, which is a method for creating new designs and designing new products. And the idea is that these statements actually are very effective when you're giving someone feedback on a draft or a prototype. And so again, when you ask your questions, if you can ask them using those prompts, I like, I wish, I wonder. You're going to have 20 minutes in total for this exercise. And we're hoping that the first person is going to take about 5 to 7 minutes to explain what they did from their learning log. The other person is going to take about 2 to 3 minutes to ask questions, and then you're going to switch roles. So 10 minutes for the first person to the first person to explain and receive feedback, and then 10 minutes for the second person to do that. We're going to tell you when 10 minutes is up by changing the screen. And as in past exercises like this, we'd like you to raise your hand when you're done. If you have a question at any time during this exercise, if you could either raise your hand or type a message into the chat box with your question, we'll get back to you right away. So again, in a moment, we are going to turn off our microphone and we are going to turn it over to you. And we would like you to use this time, again, about 20 minutes to have a conversation with your chat partner today. If you're set up for Skype, do it on Skype. If not, use the chat box. Go ahead and begin. And remember, type your questions in the chat box.
Dawn needs to leave a little early today, so Kelly SD hasn't yet joined us. Why don't you pair up with Tom? So if I could just ask you to share your Skype ID with Tom via the chat box, then hopefully the two of you can connect. And Dawn, thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next week.
Great. Again, go ahead and get started with that exercise. We'll change the screen in 10 minutes to let you know there's 10 minutes left. We'll give you a 1
Hi everyone, just a reminder, you've got 10 minutes left. Thanks. Okay, guys, we've got 1 minute left, so if you could try and finish off, and then raise your hand when you finish so that we know. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. We're going to ask you to come back now. And again, I apologize if we have cut any conversations short. Again, I want to emphasize the importance of taking time to share your research ideas with a colleague or a critical friend to get feedback about your research plans, about your data collection plans, about the data collection tools themselves. I know that many of you in your practice, when you're developing common assessments, will spend a lot of time with teachers who are teaching at the same grade level or in the same subject area, moderating test questions and test responses to ensure that higher level of validity and reliability. And that those same kinds of practices are so important in action research. So at this point, I just want to find out if any of you have any questions at this point about what we've covered in session 7 or what we've covered in our previous sessions. If you would like to go ahead and if everyone put your hand down first, because some people still have their hand up from finishing the last activity. And if you have a question, please raise your hand. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions right now, which is fine. I know that all of you know that you can contact us at any time in between sessions as questions arise, and we are happy to try to answer them. Just as a bit of a preview, I want to remind you that we're going to be continuing our discussion about data collection in the next session. And specifically in our next session, we are going to be talking about, and it's gone out of my head as quickly as I've asked the question.
Interpreting data.
So we're going to be talking about interpreting data. We're going to be talking specifically about how you code qualitative data. So how do you take physical descriptions or responses, open-ended responses that people have given you, and turn those into numeric data? Again, it's a really important skill. We're just going to touch the tip of the iceberg with it next week. But again, we're hoping that it's something that if you would like to know more about it to conduct your individual project, that it will kind of give you the information that will help you get started. Dr. Christina Hinton, who works at the Harvard Graduate School of Education's Research School International Program, is going to be joining us in our next session as one of our participants on GoTo training. And so we're still trying to figure out a format to give Christina an opportunity to share some of her experience with you directly and to answer questions that you might have. So you might begin thinking about questions you have about your individual research questions or projects that you're thinking about that you might want to ask Christina at that time. As a follow-up, session 9, which will be the following week, Christina is going to be here in person at the Center for Inspiring Minds at West Lodge. And I think that Latif already has sent out a notice inviting any of you who can to join us here live. For those of you who can't join us here, we're of course going to be using GoToMeeting, and we'll be joining you from your campuses or your homes, wherever you are. But again, if you'd like to come here live, you're welcome to do that. I'm sure that there'll be a little bit of time after the session to ask her additional questions about the things that you might be working on.
Okay, so as per usual, I will be sending out a checkout survey straight after this meeting. I just want to apologise for the email that went out earlier today. I know it's caused a lot of confusion, so ignore that email and I will send out the right email straight after this session. And if you could let me know by email once you've done the survey, we'll send you the session 8 materials for next week. There is a learning log for your learning points, so be sure to fill that in. So it's always there in the future to help you. And finally, just before we close this session out, just want to tell you about a couple of events that SIM are hosting. The first one is actually tomorrow at 3:30 UK time, and it's a twilight session for working with bilingual and plurilingual learners, and it is being broadcast at all the 4 ACS campuses. If you're in Cobham and you would like to attend, it will be the ILC, and then at Egham, Hillingdon and Doha, please speak to your head of school PA. They will have organised a space for where it's being held, so please feel free to join us there. Again, we've got an external researcher coming in for that event, Dr. Dina Mehmedbegovic from the Institute of Education. And many of you will know about our Celebration of Learning event on the 16th of May. I'll be sending out an email about this to this group, but it's a Saturday morning, 9 till 12, and then straight after this there will be a champagne brunch. So if hopefully that will tempt you to come along and learn about our projects that have been going on this academic year.
For those of you in Doha, we are going to do a video broadcast of that event to Doha. And again, if you check with Susan Nichols, she will know the location of that event. Unfortunately, for us, it will be a weekend as well. For you, it'll be on Saturday, the second day of your weekend. And again, it'll be from 11 o'clock until about 1 o'clock for you. Yeah.
Until 2.
So again, if you're available for that and you'd like to hear more about the work that's happened over the past year on the projects, please do plan to join us. Thank you, everybody, for joining this week, and we look forward to seeing you in the session next week.
Okay, thank you. Bye.